Okay, hi. Welcome back. So this is my channel all about book summaries and uh, a bit of opinion. I mean, I can't help myself, especially with things that I've dealt with. I'm, you know, it's too tempting. I have to give my opinion. But for the most part, this is a channel where I summarize books in depth. The book I'm doing now is How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler and Charles Van Doren. We're on part 2, chapter 10, and the title of this one is Criticizing a Book Fairly. So, as you can probably tell from the chapter title, there's a certain intellectual etiquette, right, when it comes to forming an opinion about a book. It is important when doing so not to descend into bickering, okay? Uh, what I mean by bickering here is arguing just for arguing's sake. Okay, I have nothing to say. I don't know what I'm talking about, but hey, I'm gonna talk anyway, right? Um, either out of malice or out of a sense of insecurity, or because you're just someone who feeds off negative energy. Okay, resist the temptation if that's the case. Okay, the point the point of the point of reading and analyzing and assessing and being an intellectual is to engage in profitable conversation. Okay, the worst thing a reader can do after reading a good book is to put it aside or fail to criticize it. Okay, so you shouldn't run away from this. Okay, you should definitely give your opinion. Okay, you should definitely criticize it. Okay, but do so generously. Okay, make sure you've understood first. It's your obligation. Okay, as a reader, you must, after reading a book, a good book, either to agree with it, or to disagree with it, or to defer judgment. Okay, and the reader can only do so after reading actively, which was basically what we've been talking about. Okay, throughout, and we'll continue to talk about. Okay, again, this is something you must do. Okay, agree, disagree, or defer judgment. All right. Many students, okay, and people in general, they assume that since they're not intellectually on par with the author, they have no right to pass judgment or criticism. Okay, this is far from the truth. Okay, not so. Authors generally write for the everyday man and woman. And so, after reading a certain book, you should have understood the main points the author had to make. Consequently, you should have reached a stage where you can agree or refute, or realize that you need to read other texts in order to pass fair judgment. Okay? A good student is active. A good reader is active, not passive. I quote here: to regard anyone except yourself as responsible for your judgment is to be a slave, not a free man. Page 141. Okay, so I think that gets the point across. Um, yeah, gets the point across. Okay, again, there's an assumption to what I and Adler and the quote I've just said, right? You can only do this if the author has written for the layperson, okay, the general audience, the everyday man or woman, okay. I think we'll mention that at some point. Okay, some books are simply not written for the general public. Okay, most, however, are. All right, we're now ready to divulge Rule 9. I quote: do not begin to talk back until you have listened carefully and are sure you understand. Page 142. Okay, I've already mentioned the 3 stances you can take: agree, disagree, or suspend judgment. Great. By the way, you can be wrong in agreeing, all right? Just as you can be in disagreeing. That's something to keep in mind. The last stance, suspending judgment, indicates that the evidence has been insufficient for you to make up your mind or be otherwise persuaded. Okay. I've already touched upon rule number 10, but here it is stated explicitly. When you disagree, do so reasonably, okay, and not disputatiously or contentiously. Okay, page 145. Learning the truth is what matters, not winning the argument. Okay, if you have trouble agreeing, if you feel incompetent and feeble for doing so, then your problem is not an intellectual one, it's a psychological one. Okay, if you feel that agreement is weakness, that's your problem, not the author's. Okay, there's no nice way to say that. All right. And not only should you not callously disagree, but you must also recognize that disagreements can be resolved. Okay? In other words, do not be insensitive when disagreeing, but do not be hopeless either. Usually, some form of compromise can be reached. And in the worst case scenario, agree to disagree. It's that simple. Okay? A learned person, I quote, should be as much prepared to have his own mind changed as seek to change the mind of another. Page 148. Again, the main obstacle here is not intellect, okay? But, rather it's a psychological obstacle, okay? In this case, the ego that interferes with genuine communication. Last point in this chapter. To agree or disagree, the reader must differentiate between knowledge and opinion. In the last video, I talked about reasons and propositions. If an author's claim is not backed up by these, such as evidence and facts, chances are that his or her claim is, in fact, an opinion, not an argument. Arguably, the point of reading a book is not to judge the author, the person, but the book, the content. So, here is rule number 11. I quote, respect the difference between knowledge and mere personal opinion by giving reasons for any critical judgment you make. Page 150. Of course, just because knowledge, as opposed to opinion, is supported by convincing evidence, should not goad us into accepting it blindly. New evidence may surface that contradicts or refutes it. Still, the distinction between knowledge and opinion stands. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.